Something a lot of athletes and even coaches struggle with at times is being able to plan out a week, being able to get high intensity in, be able to get the volume, fit it all into 7 days, particularly when we've got athletes who may not be at the professional level and have other commitments outside of their training. So today's video is all about how you can fit everything into the week, the spacing, what my process is in terms of spacing different types of sessions out, so you can manage your load so you're not overcooking it in parts, but you're getting the most out of your training. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Nick here, talking everything science of endurance and sports science in general. Make sure if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button down below. You can actually see, I'll put the analytics up here, 94% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed to the channel, which is just crazy because we're almost at about 2,000 subscribers as of recording this video, which is great so far. I've been loving the feedback and the support on the channel. But make sure you do hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with the latest videos, because there's going to be more coming over the next little while, with Melbourne going back into a 6-week lockdown as of the other day. So I'm going to be hopefully being able to get a bit more regular content out over the next 6 weeks anyway. So make sure you are subscribed and to keep up to date with everything that is coming out. Today's video is another one stemming from a question that we had in the comment section. So please make sure you hit up the comments down below with any of your questions you want answered on the channel in a video. And this one was all about how do I actually structure a week and get everything in together? How do I balance my high intensity with my long, slow volume? How can I get it working in the week so I'm not overcooking it in a short 3-day period and then having nothing to do for the rest of the week? Or I'm not going into a long distance session or a long slow session already fatigued from high intensity, or vice versa. And so I'm going to take you through a few examples of a triathlete example, because I know that's a tricky one for a lot of you out there juggling multiple sports. I'm going to also talk through how you can work in strength into there, and then my overriding philosophy of undulating sort of volume and intensity throughout the week. First thing I want to sort of preface this is, these are examples. Please don't necessarily follow these to a T. Some of these might be applicable directly to your circumstance, and if it is, then honestly, that is complete fluke. A lot of what we do when we do plan out weekly structures or weekly templates in terms of where sessions might go, not the specifics of the sessions, but what types of sessions are we doing in certain parts of the week, has a lot to do with the individual athlete, what we call their training history or their training age. So essentially, how well trained is that person? How long have they been training for? What type of training are we going to do on top of what they've already done previously? What their racing is, what their time availability is. There's a lot of factors that go into the different things. Even something as simple as how well an athlete responds to doing, if you've got a triathlete, how well do they respond to a run session the day after doing a bike session? Do they like doing a run session before they do the bike? Those little things are going to be individual difference. So I'm not going to focus too much on that, because I could go on and on. Every single individual person that I spoke to in the comments, or if you jumped on and we had an individual chat, we might tweak it according to you based on a number of different variables that are unique to your circumstance. These are just generic ideas. Like I said, you can use them, but use the principles, and I want you to understand the principles behind it rather than just taking the template, because you're going to get a lot more out of it and it's going to be more meaningful to your circumstance. So what I'm going to throw up here is the triathlon example, and I've got it in front of me here. And what I've just done is listed Monday to Sunday, sessions across the week. Blue sessions are swims, red is gym, orangey yellow color is your running sessions, and then the green are the bikes. What have I done in this circumstance? This is something that's very typical of triathlon, is that we might have something along the lines of 3 of each. What I call it a 3-3-3. We have 3 swims, we have 3 bike sessions, and we have 3 run sessions. I've also included the gym sessions in there, which I'll get to in a second. So all in all, throughout the week, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, we got 11 sessions in the week, which might be a lot for some of you. This might be a bit overkill. You might be doing what I call a 2-2-2. So 2 swim, 2 bike, 2 run. Maybe you're not doing the gym. Maybe you're only doing 1 gym session. Again, these are templates, not specific to an individual. What I've done here though is as best as possible, I've tried to space out the opposites and also the similarities. So what you'll notice is instantly the easy thing is Saturday, Sunday, I've got long bike, long run. A lot of athletes, particularly at the amateur level, find it a lot more practical to get the longer sessions in on the weekend. Why? Because we have time. Typically, people aren't at work in their 9-to-5 jobs on a Saturday and Sunday. Again, typically. So what does that allow us to do? It allows us to go out and do that bigger volume. Typically, it fits in around family commitments and things like that for a lot of people. There's usually less traffic on the roads, etc. So it is a little bit more manageable to get that done on the weekend, and hence why I put it there first. That's really my first go-to when working with amateur athletes. Professionals and the elite end of the spectrum, if you've got the time availability and you want to go out on a Friday or a Thursday, middle of the day, because there is no traffic there because everyone else is at work, that's fine. And if that's where the best weather is, etc., to train in, that's okay. But again, this is using a very typical example. So long sessions on the weekend there. I typically go bike into run as a preference, but a lot of athletes like to run into bike. Really, that doesn't matter too much. It's just you have to consider that the bike typically is going to be easy to back up from because it's not as impacting on the body, but you are going to be potentially doing more volume, more time on legs or time turning the pedals, if you like. I then look at prioritizing my high intensity sessions. So I've just listed them as interval sessions because typically your high intensity is going to be some sort of interval structure. And what I've done here is I've followed that same structure of bike first on the weekend into run, and I've taken my bike intervals, put them on the Tuesday, and then taken my run intervals and put them on a Thursday. Why have I spaced them out by a day? Because of the crossover fatigue. So ideally, if we were even just following a 2-2-2, so we're doing 2 swim, 2 bike, 2 run, you'd have your intervals, you have a bike session Tuesday, you have a swim session Wednesday, run session Thursday, swim session Friday. You're alternating days. So you're constantly getting, one, something different, but two, you're not repeatedly getting the same stimulus, which I know for a lot of athletes can be difficult, particularly the running side of things. If you're backing up and trying to do 2 runs in back-to-back running days or 3 triple back-to-back running days, can be really difficult to manage from a load and an injury preventative standpoint if you're just beating your body up a lot. So spacing them out in the week and particularly spacing out the intervals also allows you to recover from a nervous system perspective. If you're doing really very high intensity stuff, it allows you to recover from a metabolic perspective or a damage perspective if you're doing some intermediate type intervals. When I say intermediate, 2 to 8 minutes in length. If you're working 2 to 4 minutes for VO2, you're doing 5 to 8 minutes of threshold. There's going to be more of that metabolic stimulus, that burning in the legs, the dead legs, that feeling sensation afterwards. So leaving a day in between is going to allow you to recover to then go and repeat that same type of session then when you're running. Why have I then on the interval days put short run or short zone 2 run and short zone 2 bike at the end of it? You can see I've done them afterwards. Is because that's a way to just top up the additional volume. You're not doing a big 4-hour ride after you've done your running intervals in the morning. You might go out and do an hour. You might just do an hour spin on the trainer to get a bit of extra volume into the legs to top up what you might not be able to get done completely on a Saturday or a Sunday. Or if you feel like you need the extra volume, you can just do that. Hour and a half, absolute max. It doesn't have to be huge. And for the running one on the Tuesday there, doing bike intervals in the morning and then getting into your zone 2 afterwards, you can just do something like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. You might build up to an hour, but that might be the biggest short run, if that makes sense, in the whole program. Intervals first is always typically easier because we want you to be fresher to get the intensity up there. We don't want to be trying to pushing the high intensity stuff on dead legs. Makes sense. It's going to get a better quality stimulus if we can push the intensity to where it needs to be and maintain that throughout the session. Zone 2 is a lot more manageable. If you're a bit fatigued from the session earlier in the day, if you are doubling up like this, you probably just find that your pace is a bit down for your heart rate being the same, or your heart rate might be a bit higher for the same pace. That's okay. You can manipulate that and you can just bring the intensity back down to match it. You'll still get the same stimulus. But if you miss your pacing in some intervals, particularly VO2 style that I've talked about before, where it's really critical to get 95% of VO2 max, then it becomes a bit of an issue. Then it comes down to where I fit other stuff. Swims in there. You can see I've just gone Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the days that we aren't riding or running. And I typically, a lot of athletes find that doing gym on the same day as they swim is a much better way to fit it in. Why? Because swimming is the least impacting on the body because you're in a different fluid, the buoyancy of the water and the unloading on the body that the water provides allows you to then feel a little bit fresher. It can help flush the body out. If you do your gym session first or you do it after you swim, it almost doesn't really matter. Just keep in mind, if you are doing a lot of arm work in the gym, you're doing some pull-ups and some good stuff for your back, your shoulders from a swimming perspective, just be mindful it might impact a bit of fatigue going into a swim set. If you're doing them straight away, ideally split them up out the day, but I know a lot of you might be going to a pool typically and then going into the gym that is at the pool or vice versa. It's the type of thing that just be mindful about how much fatigue you're creating in crossover sessions. But I like to get those gym sessions done on those days because typically swimming is going to be very, very upper body dominant, whereas in the gym, a lot of the time you're going to be working on some lower body dominant activities to then have a performance or an injury preventative effect from a running or cycling perspective using the legs. Really, there's a quick breakdown of how I like to structure a triathletes week. You might add in extra sessions if you need the extra volume. You might want to do more, you might want to do less. That's not really what I'm talking about. It's really just giving you an idea of how things fluctuate throughout the week. And that's where I'm going to move into, I guess, a runner or a cyclist side of things where we take out the complexity of 3 sports and we just look at one. And this is how I follow that structure. I follow it very, very similar. You see here the interval sessions are split out on a Monday and a Thursday, so we've got that gap in between. Actually push a bit bigger gap because we've got the time allowance to do it. We might also then double up. So in a running case, we might do some running intervals on a Monday. Then we might do a shorter zone 2, so that 45, maybe 60 minutes on a Tuesday. Wednesday is gym only, so it just gives you a chance to stop, not necessarily run. You might do some cross training or some off legs conditioning. You can see the notes down the bottom there. You might also add that extra zone 2 run where the rest day is. But the off legs conditioning could just be a short spin on the bike if you like to do some swimming if you're a runner. Cycling, if you like to do like one run set during the week, just like 30 minutes just to get out and do something different, could be a good alternative. And then you can see there we've spaced out the gym. So we start to go away, because it is easy to manage, we start to go away from double training days and head into singles. Again, same scenario with what we had before though. If you want to add the extra volume, you want to do the extra sessions, this here is an example of someone running 4 times a week. That's pretty typical of the average amateur runner. If you want to run 6 times a week, if you want to run 7, if you want to run 8 times a week, you got to think about how it's going to have an impact on your body. But if you can tolerate it and you're getting a good response in terms of training and you're performing well and it's actually helping you, and particularly as you get close to the elite level, maybe it's something you need to look at, then we start to go, okay, we need to add in some extra runs here and there. But from a general structure, I'd be getting the core basics in here first, and then I'd be adding. So like I've said here, extra zone 2 run on a Sunday. You might go out and just do that extra set of Ks on a Sunday. If you were really pushing it and trying to get a really really extend on the stimulus and really try to induce a little bit more fatigue, you might substitute that Saturday long run for a bit more of an interval type session, or a long interval, a bit more maybe tempo is where you could start to fit that in as well. You might do a tempo run Saturday and then your zone 2 on the Sunday. So again, we're looking at the quality of intensity as a priority, then getting the volume, fitting that in the week and trying to undulate it together. So we've got high intensity, low intensity, high intensity, low intensity is where I'm getting at. And this is really the last thing I want to show you, is how it all ties together, and really the process in my mind, and a visual representation of what my brain's doing in terms of understanding in the week, is really I look at these squiggly lines in my head. That's how I picture it. And I'm just looking at providing this undulating style. And it's what you would have picked up in the previous 2 examples of weekly structures, is that each day is almost changing in terms of its focus. We have a high intensity day, but that high intensity day is going to have typically a little bit less of volume. The triathlete example is a bit different because we have to train multiple sports. There's just not enough time in the week to do single days if we want to train 3 times a week for each of the sports. But we'll typically alternate it. So if we have a high intensity morning, we'll have a longer, slower afternoon. But we're not going to do the big session. We're not going to go do 5 hours of riding after we've done a high intensity running session in the morning. We're going to just do an hour 10, relatively low volume. So what I'm getting at here is you can see the green line in terms of intensity is up early in the week on the Monday. But as intensity starts to decline, we start to get a bit more volume. And as volume starts to decline, we get more intensity. What I'm showing you here is just a way of undulating the week so we're not always on or not always off. It's a really good way of balancing training load throughout the week and making sure you're not overcooking it in certain parts and not doing too much damage to the body. The last thing we want to, do, or the major thing we were trying to avoid with this, is really high intensity or having a lot of intensity, but then also having a lot of volume. Or the main thing we want to avoid is all the way off or all the way on. That polar extreme is where we get things like injuries. That's where we get burnout. It's where you go from 0 to 100 too quick. And we, as you know, if you jumped in a race car and just put your foot flat in the pedal and you didn't know how to control the car, it's going to get out of control. That's essentially what the body's doing here. If we overload it too quickly, too rapidly in one spot, and have what we call an acute spike in training load, or a spike in acute training load, high amount of fatigue really, really quick, it's then harder to recover from. But if you just have these random bursts where we go up, nothing, it's very difficult to then get this gradual progression. It's also much more susceptible to things like injury. If we have this undulating style where there's always something on, but then something else is off as a compromise, we're much less susceptible because we have more of a constant training load throughout the week, and it kind of balances itself out nicely. Hopefully you've got a little bit out of this video. I know there's a bit to talk through and it can get a bit complicated. If you do have any questions, leave them down in the comments below about how you structure your week. How do you try to plan it out? Do you follow a similar idea to what I'm going on here, or do you use a different method? Let me know down below. Interested to hear your thoughts. As always, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below to keep up to date with all the new videos. That's it for today, and we'll see you in the next one.